All right, we have participants joining in. So thank you so much for joining in today, taking out time amongst all of the priorities that you have. So we will make sure that you get the most of today's session. Your time is precious, and we will make sure you have some key takeaways that you can implement immediately within your organization. So I'd like to welcome Rahul Jagirdar, Lalit, Pratiksha Thakre, uh, Sundar, Shubhangi, Anand, and others who are joining in for today's session. So while we are waiting for others, let's give a couple of minutes for others to join in. Thanks for joining in, Akhil. So why don't you share in the chat box which city are you from and which organization are you representing today? So those who have joined in, we would love to hear from you. Which city are you from and which organization are you representing? Please feel free to write in the chat box, and do change your chat settings to everyone. Am I audible? Am I visible? Super.
Yes, yes.
Lovely. So Pratiksha, thank you for that acknowledgement, that participation. Pratiksha is from Delhi, KPMG. Would love to know where Rahul is from, where Lalit is from, where Sundar is from, where Vikas is from. Saurabh, yeah, welcome Saurabh. Saurabh is from Paytm. Lovely Saurabh, glad to have you here. All right. Thank you for sharing that, TJ. TJ is from UK, Amsterdam, and she's representing Secure Code Warrior, and she is the expert speaker of our day. So Lalit is from Bangalore. Fazal is the name of the organization, Lalit. Srijit Ramakrishnan is from ECL Finance, Mumbai. Lovely to have you here today. Sundarajan is from KPMG Bangalore. Super excited to have you, Sundarajan, today. So yeah. So thank you so much for your active participation. And I'm sure throughout the session, we will have a lot of engagement and participation from amazing audience here, because I'm sure this is very important for you. That is why you've decided to show up today, right? Because it's Diwali time, there is so much happening around, and yet today you are here in this webinar. So at least what I can promise, what TJ can promise, what Meteonic can promise you today is that you will have an insightful session. You will have some key takeaways, actionable strategies that you could take to your organizations and apply. And on that note, while we are still waiting for a lot more people to join in, what I feel is that as security professionals, right, you are at the forefront of the battle against security threats. And that battle does not happen once in a year or once a month. It's every moment you are facing these security threats, and your role is so instrumental in determining the level of security maturity your organization can attain, right? So we do understand your challenges, right? And in this digital age, as security leaders, you hold a very pivotal role in safeguarding your organizations against these threats. You don't even know who your enemy is, right? So your role has evolved from primarily a compliance focused position to a strategic leadership role, guiding the organization's security posture and maturity. And it's not post activity that you need to do, it's more about proactiveness, staying ahead a few steps or maybe 100 steps ahead of what is it that will bother you in future, right? So the security maturity of your organization depends on your ability to manage and reduce security if risks effectively and proactively. The word is proactive, right? It encompasses your organization understanding of threats, policies, processes, and your ability to respond to this incidents timely or proactively. Again, right? So from a CISO, for a CISO, raising an organization security not only means protecting the organization from all these threats, but also being able to align to business objectives like reducing cost, maintaining reputation, and customer trust, and upskilling your developers on an ongoing basis. How to manage your resource constraints, how to manage skilling of your key developers, security developers, right? So your role has evolved so much over a period of time, right? So what we can do today, right? We will be sharing, TJ will be sharing, an industry expert with over 20 plus years of experience, and I'll give a brief intro to her a little later. But the agenda is to help you give a proactive approach to security that aims to reduce vulnerabilities, minimize the risk of security breaches from the outset, right? So it involves equipping your developers with the necessary knowledge, tools, equipping yourself with what's happening in the industry, latest trends, secret strategies, best practices, right? Because all these fosters a culture of security. Agree? If you agree, type in the chat box, agree, or give me a thumbs up. If you agree with what I just said, type in the chat box, agree, or give a thumbs up. Super, super. Your energy should reach us so that we can amplify the energy together and make sure this webinar gives you a great experience and also key insights and takeaways for you to explore. Thank you so much. So all I want to say is that your organization's security is counting on your leadership, right? So let's embark on this journey together. Make security an intrinsic part of your software development process. Reduce technical debts. Shift left, not just in theory, implement shift left, right? So on that note, I would like to thank you so much for your acknowledgement, Naman, TJ, Sundar, Akhil, thank you so much. And I would love to have an engaging participant. You already are. So before I hand over to the speaker, because we have some more participants joining in, I would like to run a quick poll, right? Let's understand what your top security challenges are, right? So even before I start the poll, I have some announcements that if you have any questions during the session, please post them in the Q&A box so we can address it timely, right? We don't want to push your questions to the end. So as and when your questions are coming, at logical closure points, we would love to address all your questions, and we don't want to miss your important questions. So please do type them in the Q&A box, because in the chat box it may get lost, right? So, and you will get the recording of this session tomorrow as soon as it's ready, and we upload it on YouTube. You can access it. So anything you need, you can reach out to Meteonic. We will share all the details later, right? So let's launch a quick poll and understand what are your top 3 challenges at present, because we have representations from different organizations. Your needs may be different. Let's see, is there a pattern unfolding here, or your needs are very unique and specific, right? So I've launched the poll. So what are your top 3 most pressing challenges faced by leadership teams, right, in elevating your security maturity? Is it constantly evolving threat landscape, or is it resource allocation, or is it skill shortage, or is it integration of security into DevSecOps, and implementation as well, integration and implementation? I should have made that answer a little better. Or the third party risks, right? So your answers are pouring in. Love all your responses, but it will be great if we have participation from at least 70%. I've received from 50% so far. Lovely. Keep your answers pouring in. Okay, so as of now, the toppers in the list are skill shortage and constantly evolving threat landscape. Give me a moment. As soon as I close the poll, I'll share the results with you. But in the meantime, all right, the number 1 is skill shortage. Okay, so right now, so I'm still waiting for some more participation so that we can actually confidently say that that is the number 1 challenge and that is the number 2 challenge, right? All right, lovely. Love all yours. Again, we have constantly evolving threat landscape and skill shortage tie up at number 1. That's why I need some more responses, right? So okay, the game has changed. Skill shortages goes to number 2, and constantly evolving threat landscape goes to number 1. But can you see how closely interrelated they are? Can you see how closely interrelated they are? Lovely. I'm going to end the poll on a count of 3, 2, 1. The topper in our list is constantly evolving threat landscape and skill shortage on 53%, constantly evolving threat landscape on 59%, and integration of DevSecOps. Yep, that's number 3, right? So I hope you are seeing the poll results, and I would also like to welcome all those who join in a little later. I would have personally love to call out your name, but in the interest of time, please consider this as a personal welcome on this session, and would love to know which city are you from, which organizations you are representing. In the meantime, I would like to hand this over to TJ. So as we all know that if I hope you got a chance to look at TJ's profile, right? She has over 20 plus years of experience, and she's worked with some very big organizations, to name Google, Amazon. Am I right, TJ? Right?
Yeah, Cisco.
TJ, could you add on some more couple of lines to your introduction, which helps establish your credibility and your authority, and you having earned the right to share what are the trends and industry secrets that our audience can get from you today?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everybody. My name is TJ Griffiths. So as mentioned already, I'm based here in the UK at the moment. This is where I was born and grew up, but I've lived and worked all over the world. So I started in Amsterdam. I worked for Cisco Systems for 15 years. I worked with them as a project manager through their IT department. I worked with their client services. So I had a very close relationship with the organizations that they partnered with. And that led on to me, after I'd had children, as I grew a bit older, I moved and worked for Amazon. So I worked in fraud prevention with Amazon for over 5 years, and thoroughly enjoyed that before moving through to work with Google. Where I was a partner who worked with Google creating bespoke software for their Google Business Suite with an organization called Cloud Sherpas. We then were absorbed and worked with Accenture. So I worked also with Accenture for around 2 years as well. And that then led on to my move to SecureCo Warrior, where I'm working today. And I've been here for around 3 years at the moment. I'm a solutions engineer, so I work with all of our clients in order to demonstrate the platform that we have for our clients, and identify and generate the business case, the ROI, the valuation reports, and all of the useful working implementation cases that we have for the platform. So I'd like to share with you today a short presentation that I've created, and hopefully that will result in a bit of conversation around sort of the needs and maybe generate some stories and some input in how that's impacting you and your organizations. And so yes, if I may, I'll share my screen and we'll have a look at the slides that I have for you, and perhaps a little bit of a look at our platform as well. So if I can share my entire screen, if that's okay. Hopefully you'll be able to see my screen right now. If maybe you could confirm, somebody, if you can see me.
Yes, TJ, it's visible.
Wonderful. Okay, super. So whoops, instead of sharing that, I'm going to slideshow it. There we go. Okay, so what do we mean when we're talking about unlocking trends and secrets? So SecureCo Warrior spend a lot of time talking with developers and understanding, and with CEOs, CISOs, to understand what's impacting their organization. And the poll that was just done was really interesting, because the top 2 areas there that were uncovered, so the ever-evolving climate and attracting and retaining the right skill set, are 2 of the main things that we hear all the time. Very, very important to organizations, very difficult to deal with this ever-evolving climate, and to attract and retain the correct people with the right level of skill. And these are some of the areas that we hope to address, when we work with our clients. So I'm going to go through a few slides, and we'll just have a bit of a conversation about, some of those kind of discoveries that we've done ourselves, what we see, and then we're going to look into a little bit more depth of the kind of top 3 areas that or common 3 areas that we find that are impacting for CISOs as well, and how we address that within the software that we utilize. So let's start and have a little look. So a while back in 2022, we conducted a poll with developers called the State of Developer-Driven Security. This was a poll which was ran in a way that didn't, there were no organizational sort of representation. Nobody was identified, so it was all very completely anonymous. And what we wanted to know was, do you think that you leave vulnerabilities in your code? And we wanted honest answers. If we ask people in businesses today and their managers are with them, we get lots of no, we don't do that. But the reality is that we know that developers often leave vulnerabilities in code, sometimes accidentally, sometimes intentionally, sometimes they don't wish to leave vulnerabilities in code, but they fear they need to because of time pressure deadlines or prioritizing functionality, whatever the case may be. And in this poll, when we ran this, we had some very honest responses, with almost half of those developers, 48%, admitting to us that they do knowingly leave vulnerabilities in code. The reasons for that we'll look into in just a moment. And then another 19% telling us that it often depends on the project that they're running. And so, a whopping, 67% of developers admit to leaving vulnerabilities in code. And what that results in is a knock-on effect, obviously, of subsequent work. Code is written, it's put into our QA systems, we scan it, we monitor it, we check it, we recheck it. And when we've run through this process, we find that these vulnerabilities are identified and categorized. You've got your general vulnerabilities, high-risk vulnerabilities, and this results in an element of rework for organizations. Firstly, we know that developers hate doing rework. They like writing code from scratch. They enjoy that. That's what their job is. It's creative. It's what they really enjoy. And when it comes to reworking, they're not so keen. Who wants to go back and rewrite an email that you've accidentally, written halfway, deleted, and then have to start writing it all over again? It's laborious. It's not particularly fun. And the same goes for code, right? If you've written code, then having to go back and fix it is a big issue. Not only that, but identifying exactly that vulnerability, which doesn't always just occur on one line. There will be subsequent impacts. The vulnerabilities will appear in various guises throughout the code. It takes a huge amount of time and effort for developers to spend looking at their code to really understand where this vulnerability is, and then they need to understand how to fix it and how to remediate it and make sure that it's safe. For this reason, we know that a lot of developers, quite possibly the initial, yes, 40%, we definitely do leave vulnerabilities in code, opt to do that quite often because they know that they can sometimes get away with it by coding in a particular way, which pushes their data through the SDLC, through the QA cycle, and ensures that their code gets posted. Now, we know that will often also result then in subsequent issues, so bugs and issues that are identified post-production, post-deployment, and the further down the line that happens, the more expensive the fix becomes. So this is obviously very impacting for business. And part of the issue there is obviously time pressures. Part of it is when it comes to making sure that that everything is fitting into the project timelines and so on. And so developers, like anyone, will find a shortcut and push that code through in order to get it done. So let's have a little look at the reasons, why these vulnerabilities do exist in the code. Again, state of the developer-driven security of those developers. The answers that they gave us were that they 37% were telling us they prioritize functioning over security. Well, as we can see here, this is a multiple choice, so there were several reasons for some of the developers. Prioritizing functionality over security was the main reason. And that is also ties in very tightly with we needed to meet a release deadline. This is what I hear most of all, needing to meet a release deadline. And therefore, cutting corners perhaps a little bit, or indeed just not intentionally cutting corners, needing to meet deadlines and prioritizing functionality and not having the support that you need and understanding of those vulnerabilities, which are ever changing and evolving, leaves you with the situation where, it's also very possible to unintentionally implement vulnerabilities into code as well. Also, that people don't necessarily also understand what makes code vulnerable. At Secure Code Warrior, we look and we focus on vulnerabilities. We focus on training on vulnerabilities. We currently cover 159 different vulnerabilities, but this is ever evolving. When I started working for the organization, it was fewer than that. We've got a lot more content and information that helps developers to really understand these vulnerabilities. We all remember Log4j when that happened, for example, and how worrying that was. And being able to adapt and evolve to those new vulnerabilities that are identified is very important for us as an organization and for you as an organization, because it only takes one slip, one breach, and we know that what the subsequent impact of that is. We all remember Equifax, for example, back in the day with the data breach, and this can really have a huge damaging impact to organizations. 32% of us told us it was a fact that all code has vulnerabilities, and that in a way is true as well. Of course it does, if it is written in a way which is not security conscious and not taking into account those vulnerabilities. And again, lacking the knowledge to address these vulnerabilities is also a very big issue for organizations. Having the time to do the training, being able to implement that training, the cost of training, spending time in the classroom, all of these things are very impacting for organizations. And so having the time and the knowledge in order to address anything, especially upfront, and to really do that shift left that we all talk about so much, is really it's hard work, and it's not something that is necessarily prioritized by organizations, because there is a cost and a time involved. But when we look at the cost and the time involved at the subsequent end, once that code is written, then we really see that addressing these things proactively pays off in the long term versus retroactively. So that having been said, let me move down through my slides. And so I'm interested, and this was something I wrote as kind of a quick poll a while back, and I don't know whether we'll pop this up on the screen for you guys to answer as well, but I just put it into my slides. Do you think you can write codes without bugs or flaws? And it's really a bit more of a rhetorical question, because when I've asked that question before to rooms of developers, you get a bit of silence. You can hear the breath being sucked in. There's a bit of a kind of frosty wall. But the answer is no. Of course you can't. Don't worry. It's okay. Neither can I. Nobody can write code without bugs or flaws, because those bugs and flaws are always changing, ever evolving. There's new versions all the time. Something that you wrote yesterday, which was perfectly sound and safe, can be written in the same way tomorrow, and that will incorporate a bug or a flaw or a vulnerability that will allow somebody to breach your data, access your data, get into your code and use it for all sorts of nefarious purposes. So we know that this is something which is really impacting all businesses. So when we look at this from the developer's point of view, when developers are building the next big thing, what's the priority? We know that, and this is also where we have certain issues when it comes to focusing on on the work that developers are doing, security isn't always in the forefront of their mind. And this is why I think we also have sometimes some clashes between developers and the AppSec organization, right? When you're looking at work from a security point of view, you're looking at it from a very different point of view of a developer. So when a developer has spent a lot of time to work on creating a beautiful functional piece of software that end users will love, you know, these are the types of things that they'll be thinking, you know, it does what it's been asked to do, and within time, we've worked on this for months, look at it, it's perfect, you know. And what do the security team do? They come along and they call their baby ugly. And this is where we get a completely different point of view from what the developers see to what security see when they look at this beautiful baby that's been created by the developers. You know, don't let this go live. It's slow. Listen to it. It sounds strange. You should have involved us at the design stage. You know, it's got 3 ears instead of 2. And these pictures, actually, just for the record, are of our founder, Peter, who has incorporated his own face into this beautiful baby. So thank you to him for this lovely slide. But it's a very humorous look at a very serious problem. And this is what is the truth about when we're working in this environment today. Developers are creating this beautiful software. They see security as someone else's problem. You know, their priorities aren't security related. Their priorities are creatively related, timely related, functionality related, and those are their priorities. And security obviously comes along and then stamps over this lovely work that they've done, and they can have this strained relationship with application security because they only point out problems in their code, right? And what the developers want is, you know, is some acknowledgement for the wonderful work that they've done. So there is a great middle ground that's to be had where developers can write security driven code, and we need to be able to learn from what we have seen in the past. So the organization that I work for today, Secure Code Warrior, started about 9 years ago. No, sorry, nearly 10 years ago. It's our 10th birthday soon. The reason this organization was created was because our founder, Peter, who you saw in that lovely baby photo just a moment ago, he used to be a pen tester in Belgium many years ago, and he started to see the same security vulnerabilities and flaws coming back time and time again, over and over again, when he was working in this environment. And he got so sick of seeing this that he decided to create a system to help his developers to really understand what these security flaws look like. For example, the oldest and most established security vulnerability that we know, SQL injection, has been around for I think it's about like nearly 30 years now, right? And yet it's still the most common security vulnerability. Ask a developer to identify a SQL injection, and around 70% of developers will be able to look at a piece of code and tell you, yes, that's a SQL injection vulnerability. When it comes to finding that within their code, that drops off down to around sort of 60%. And when it comes to fixing that, you're looking at less than 50%. So this really is an issue for organizations, right? For a long time, we've been writing code, security testing, identifying flaws, spending our time with Stack Overflow on YouTube, on Google, looking for these fixes, talking to other developers, trying to understand how to resolve them, and then fixing the item without learning from our mistakes. And then we repeat the same process over again 6 months down the line. And so, you know, all that information is constantly disappearing into a big black hole. And what do we do about it? Well, we'll do maybe an annual training or compliance training, and those trainings will cost, you know, $1,000 per person. You'll sit in a classroom with 30 other people and a trainer. You'll get 8 hours of intensive training. During that time, you're getting emails. You've still got your deadlines clicking in the back of your mind. It's a nice day. You might be a bit distracted. And when you walk away from that training 6 months later, you'll remember around 20% of that training if you're lucky. So the way that this platform has been developed is really to help developers constantly address, utilize, assess, and absorb and keep that information so that it's fresh and so that it's in an engaging way. You know, there's nothing worse than sitting for 8 hours listening to a lecture and not having that kind of, you know, valuable practice. This way that we learn is much different, much more absorbable, and the results that we see are amazing. So we see over 6 months utilization, a minimum of 50% reduction in security vulnerabilities. And with one organization that we've worked with recently, we saw over 8 months, we saw an 80% reduction in security vulnerabilities introduced. This was a huge bank that we work with based out of Hong Kong. They have thousands and thousands of developers spending hundreds of thousands of hours remediating security flaws on a quarterly basis, and this has been massively reduced. The costs have been massively reduced. The quality of the code has improved. The go-to-market time of the code that they're creating has reduced, so they're getting their products out there much quicker, and they're retaining that information, and they have happier developers. They're retaining developers for longer. They've got the best skill sets that they need, and those ever-evolving bugs and flaws that we see and vulnerabilities are becoming less impactful and easier to manage for those organizations. So another quick poll for you, because the question that I always get usually at this stage is, well, what about AI? AI can write code for us now, right? And my response to this is, well, yes, it can. But AI is essentially an engine which utilizes information which is already out there and has already been created by humans, by individuals. And this AI will build code for you which contains bugs or flaws within it, which have been implemented by people without the correct security knowledge. So AI is only as smart as the input that it's drawing from, and so we still need to be on the top of our game when it comes to identifying, locating, and fixing security flaws, because using AI is not the be-all and end-all of creating safe and secure code. In fact, a recent study has identified that in fact it could be quite the opposite when it comes to using AI to write code. It is now known that that hackers have started to put nefarious code into content which is out there and is being drawn upon and used by AI, and therefore deliberately implementing security vulnerabilities into code.
So TJ, I just launched a poll so that we know what the room thinks. And I think 85% have responded that no. Do you think AI can write code without bugs or flaws? We have just 15% saying yes and 85% saying no. Although the number is increasing, we have 90% saying no. So yeah, we'll just give some 10 more seconds and then let's end this poll.
Sure, no problem.
Right.
That's very interesting, those numbers as well, because I mean, in a way, the 10% are also correct. It can write some code without bugs or flaws. It's not completely full of bugs and flaws, right. But of course, there is the propensity to draw on information out there which is already riddled with these bugs and flaws and vulnerabilities. And this obviously can create a huge problem for organizations, especially with a very evolving market.
Right. Right. So, yep, I think, yeah, we can go ahead. Saurabh says
Okay.
it writes mostly non-defensive code. Saurabh is saying in the chat box. Saurabh, it will be good to know. I think, did I miss your organization and city, Saurabh, in the beginning? So it would be good to know which organization. Oh, yes, Saurabh, Paytm. Lovely. Thank you so much. All right. Go ahead. I think, TJ, please carry on.
Okay. So So I wanted to look a little bit at some of the common issues faced by CISOs and how we really, as an organization, try to resolve those common issues. So firstly, vulnerabilities, exploitation and security breaches, right? We know that as of 2023, the average cost of a security breach, and that is a serious security breach, such as Equifax that we were talking about earlier. We've got Capita at the moment as well. The average cost of that is currently $4.45 million. And application security is a critical concern for organizations to protect their software and data from various threats and vulnerabilities, right, as we know. And so this really is something which is very detrimental to organizations. They're frequently struggling with identifying and mitigating these types of vulnerabilities within their organizations. You know, some common vulnerabilities, we've already mentioned them. We've got access control issues, SQL injection, cross-site scripting, authentication, authorization issues, insecure API integrations. Attackers are able to exploit these in order to gain unauthorized access, disrupt the application. You know, this can lead to data breaches, other security incidents, and no organization wants that. This can have huge impacts. It can damage your company reputation. It can be even more impacting, you know, as well as just the money. So the reputational damage is very difficult to undo. That can result in you know, losing clients and not maintaining the existing client base that you have. And so one interesting thing I'd like to share is how we as an organization at SecureCode Warrior start to deal with this. And we've talked a little bit about that training. And I'd like to just go into our platform and show you a practical example of what that looks like. So when we train our developers, what we do is work with organizations, firstly, to understand exactly what it is they are trying to achieve. What areas are impacting the most? Are they OWASP related? Are they PCI related? Have we got compliance things that we need to look at? Do you have access control issues that means that you're frequently getting hacked, for example? And when we identify those areas, we build out some training material that looks a little bit like this, where developers are given this gamified system. So we know that developers and gaming are synonymous with one another, that developers enjoy, the feedback that we get is that they much more enjoy a gamified platform where they can practice and learn in this type of environment rather than spending one day sitting in a classroom and not retaining that information. When developers use the platform that we have here available, they spend their time doing short, sharp challenges like this, where they're given some code snippets, they're given some insight into vulnerabilities, and then they are challenged to identify those vulnerabilities in real code snippets. So this is a very familiar environment for developers. It's very comfortable for them. It can be done in their own time. They'll spend 5 minutes while they're having a coffee, and those 5 minutes a day while they're having a coffee is invaluable for the organization. Give them these 5 minutes every day to play on this system for something which for developers, for all intents and purposes, feels very much like a game, but has a real serious undertone. You know, it gives you very great insights into what your developers know and what they don't know. That enables you to hone more into the areas where developers need to learn further. And when they start to learn, you can reduce massively those vulnerabilities. I talked about the identification, location, and fixing of vulnerabilities, and we focus on those three areas mainly because we know, or we focus mainly, on the locating and fixing, because we know, as I said, many developers can identify a vulnerability. Well, you know, so what? When it comes to locating it in your code and fixing it, that's really where the value adds for the organization. So here we see that developers are asked to, with the challenge to locate a vulnerability, and looking through these code snippets, they can see these potential vulnerabilities highlighted and submit their answers in. Those challenges are done really, really quickly. And if they want to learn more about these vulnerabilities, they do so by selecting to learn more, and they get some really good video information, which teaches them in really short, sharp bursts. See, we've got a 2-minute video here, which teaches an organization all about a vulnerability in such a quick way that they are able to learn very quickly while enjoying themselves with a coffee, score some points, see their gamified points go through onto the leaderboard, and then they can get on with their day, right? But this information sticks, and we equate it often like going to the gym. So you don't buy a gym membership, go once, and then you're done for the year. You've got all your muscles built up. You have to work at it little and often. It's the same with your brain, with your muscle memory. You build up this muscle memory as you spend your time learning about these vulnerabilities. And as you practice them and see them more and more over and over, you are able to put that into practice. Now, just for the record, I wasn't trying to solve this vulnerability. I'm not going to sit while everyone watches me reading through some code, but this is just an example of how we deal with that. So the developers in this case are given a multiple choice where they can select some of these vulnerabilities, and if you get the answer incorrect, you're given more information as to why you're incorrect. If you're correct, you're told why you're correct. We're also able to keep trying or reveal answers. So developers aren't stuck in a platform that they can't move through. They are given the flexibility to learn at their own pace. And this also comes along with the ability to then review the code. So we can go back, we can start to understand, the context of that. Why the vulnerability in this instance is this portion that has been highlighted, and where that fits into the overall code snippet and how that impacts downstream further elements of the code and so on. And then the developers will start to work through understanding the vulnerable code and the solutions for that vulnerable code. So here we're seeing that we have our vulnerable code on this side. This is what we must remove, and these are the potential solutions. Developers are given a choice of 4 different solutions they're able to work through. So they really start to more thoroughly understand those snippets, the impact, the potential fixes, and they can submit their answers. They can ask for hints and get some help so that they don't get stuck in the platform, or they can submit their answer. And again, for the record, I was just selecting one randomly just to show you how this system works. But always we're reinforcing that information, that learning, small snippets, small digestible pieces here and there. And we also combine that with the utilization of a Slack channel as well, where the developers can talk to one another and get advice and have a bit of a forum there so that they can chat. And so we find that this utilization of these small snippets of training this way really help an organization to progress and to stop implementing these types of vulnerabilities in the first place. I know that we did talk about having sort of a bit of back and forth about this. So I don't know if there's any input or anything that anybody has experienced when it comes to the ability to identify, locate, and fix vulnerabilities in your organization. If there are any comments, then please put them in the chat box. I'd be very interested to hear them.
So TJ, we have a question from Sundar. Sundar, I've given you unmute privileges. So if you would like to speak, you can. While you're doing that, in the meantime, I'll ask that question for you. What are the 2 SAST tools would you recommend with lesser cost? Please consider the below support functions as well. Number 1, tool should provide secure code recommendation when a developer try to upload the code. Tool should support ticket creation and best practice recommended for the source code.
So, well, very good. Sorry, go ahead.
So Sundar, if you would like to talk or something else, communicate, then you can simply unmute yourself.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, TJ, it's a really awesome session. Thank you for giving such a wonderful session for us. And yeah, as host has clearly mentioned, that's an actual question which I do have. On top of that, the tool which you are sharing, whether the particular package is accessible in the SaaS environment, or can we get the package to the particular on-premises environment, and can we deploy such kind of SaaS tool which would be completely isolated from the public internet? Is there any functionality in the particular tool which you are supporting at the moment?
At the moment, There currently isn't. We are a SaaS cloud environment company, so we do, and of course, because of the ever evolving content, we're always adding new content into the platform. So at the moment, we've got sort of 8,000 challenges in there. When I started 3 years ago, we had 5,000. So we're always adding lots and lots of new content. We have created an on-prem version in the past where we've worked with an organization. This obviously requires a lot of maintenance and constant updates when there is update to the content and the functionality, which is very frequently because we have monthly updates. So that may be something which is slightly prohibitive. It obviously results in like a bit of cost when it comes to that. But it's we don't have an off-the-shelf on-prem version, but we do have with the ability to do that. So we could explore that with you if that was something that you're interested in. You asked a little bit as well, I think, if I understood from the beginning of that conversation about SAST and you know, Baby Dast. I asked components as well and how we kind of tie in with those. And it was something that I was going to cover a little bit later on, but actually I have something that I can share with you and show you. So as well as the solution that we have, we integrate with a number of different solutions. So, but usually with ticketing systems, right? So we know how the QA or the code development system works. You write your code. The code is a part of the systems development lifecycle. It will go through to QA. That code will be scanned by a SaaS Dast.is solution. And then this will result often in a number of vulnerabilities being identified, some of which are high risk and will be focused on and fixed, and others which are of a lesser risk and maybe, you know, there might be a risk appetite within an organization that will mean that you can push that code through and you don't necessarily concern yourself with it. So what we do as an organization is we link our training with the output of those SaaS scans, and we build training into the output of the SaaS scans. And I'll show you what I mean by that with the integration. This is an example of an integrated system that we have with Jira. So we integrate with Jira, GitHub, GitLab, Micro Focus, Fortify, Azure, Coverity, Synopsys, numerous other solutions where we provide just-in-time training that goes with those tickets. So here we see an example. This is a Jira Kanban board, which you may be familiar with. We can see here a Veracode scan has been completed. And what that has happened is resulted in identification of a cross-site scripting vulnerability. And we can see that the system, as it's been integrated with Secure Code Warrior, that has resulted in a review of the title and the description of this ticket. Because there is a cross-site scripting vulnerability that has been identified, the system has applied a micro-learning onto the side of this ticket. So we know that developers typically, when they get their tickets, they go in and they spend an awful lot of time then trying to understand about this vulnerability. Maybe they haven't encountered it before. Maybe they have and they've forgotten this learning that they had. So, you know, this information disappears in a big black hole 6 months ago after they've not experienced this vulnerability for a while. But what we can do is apply this learning into the ticket so that developers can then learn on the job. So what they have here is, for example, reflected cross-site scripting. So we can have a number of different categories here within the learning. They get some descriptive information and they are able to watch video information to learn about reflected cross-site scripting here. They can read some coding guidelines. So we have guidelines here which are given with you know, some good insight into how to write secure code with good mitigation techniques, examples of secure and insecure coding practices, and so on. And they're set out for different languages, so they're given in you know, a huge amount of detail. And there are some links that they are given as well for OWASP and CWE, which are very, very useful. The developers can learn that on the side as they go within the ticket. And you know, quite often we find that this is enough for developers to say, okay, I know this, I've learned about this. It brings back this muscle memory from these small incremental challenges that they've been completing, and they know how to fix this issue. The alternative is, like I said, Stack Overflow, going to Google, talking to colleagues and so on. This takes a lot of time. It creates a lot of expense. It's very stressful. You know, it doesn't make developers particularly happy. And so this way we find that this jogs their memory and they're able to resolve that ticket, and we see that tickets using this system resolve around 3 times faster. The average time for fixing a vulnerability when it's identified at the development stage and the initial scanning stage with a SaaS solution, for example, is 4.9 hours, and that cost of a developer's time isn't insignificant, and that time increases as you move through the SDLC as well. So those costs only get higher. So if you identify at the beginning and you're training at the beginning, those costs are massively reduced. Now, if the developer's not learned about this before and they want to spend some time to actually train on that, they can select to train now, and the system will take them back in, and they are able to go in and select the language of their choice. They can learn in the language of the choice that they want to. They can select from a different number of cross-site scripting challenges here, and they can then enter the game mode, and the system is intelligent. It will give them a relevant learning so that they are able to focus on that. They can practice this in this safe environment before going back into their ticket and resolving the issue. I know that will have partially answered your question. Maybe to fully answer that question, we'll need to kind of take it offline a little bit to talk about the on-prem stuff and costs as well. But great question.
Sure,
Great
Tejas.
question. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Right. So just an announcement. If any of you would like to ask question, either you can type in the chat box or simply raise your hand, and we can give you the unmute privileges, and you can directly speak and get your questions resolved with TJ. So keep asking questions, because when we ask questions, only when we ask right questions, we can find right answers, and that way you can have specific takeaways. So I would highly appreciate and encourage you to ask a lot of questions. Because it's not every day that we find somebody with the 20+ years of experience working with the top companies like Google, Accenture, Cisco, Amazon available to us. Do make the most of this opportunity. Over to you, TJ. Okay,
sure. Thank you. So let's go on and look at another issue faced by CISOs that we're very aware of as well. This is where you talk about upskilling, keeping the shifting left. We talk in our organization about starting left. There's no further place to shift than starting with your developers. Lack of secure coding practices is a big issue for organizations. Having security as a concept and as an overall method in an organization, and ensuring that is part of the part of the culture, is really important for organizations. We've already learned that 67% of developers admit to sometimes knowingly leaving vulnerabilities in their code, and that really is a problem for organizations, especially if developers know that they can get through that SAST or DAST scan by coding in a particular way. Those vulnerabilities can even be missed by the systems as well. So where do you start? You start left with the developers, and developers need to understand not only how to identify, locate, and fix, but they need to understand the impact and the uses of leaving these vulnerabilities in code for hackers, and how that can be manipulated. So we also have exercises where we are able to help developers to understand more about what that looks like, how vulnerabilities manifest themselves in live code, and what that means for the organization, how it could be utilized by hackers and manipulated by hackers. So here we've got an example of a different type of scenario in our platform, where we train people on offensive challenges to look at it from a hacker's point of view to really understand. So we see that we've got our our code snippet here on the right hand side. It's dynamic. We've got live code here, which is working in conjunction with this pseudo banking app that we have. So it's a very realistic scenario for the developers. They can create changes in the back end, the front end, and they can see those changes reflecting on either side in order to really understand how this this piece of code is working. So when developers first go into this system, whoops, I accidentally clicked on my bottom button there. Let me refresh this and start again. Excuse me for that, that's typical. But when developers start working through these types of challenges, what they see, there we go, now I've logged in, is that they really get a deep and thorough understanding of what this means for their organization. You know, I think sometimes when we're faced with time challenges and time pressures and deadlines, we're focused more on that than we are on the quality, because as we said earlier, that becomes somebody else's problem. So developers in this scenario are given a really detailed description of what it is they're learning about. I talked earlier about SQL injection, the oldest and most prolific vulnerability still today, the highest number of hacks and breaches and vulnerabilities often come through SQL injection. This vulnerability has been around for nearly 30 years and it's still the most prolific. And why is that? That's because it is inherently coded in by developers, because when you learn to develop, you're learning to write a language, you're not learning how to write it securely, and security has to become intrinsic and embedded into an organization and into a developer's mindset. So the developers here are seeing this description. It tells them exactly what it is they can expect to experience from this simulation. Excuse me. And what they're asked to do here is to start to look at viewing and filtering some information. So we can see that when they put in a search parameter, for example, that's reflected in the live code. Excuse me, I just have a little cough. It's reflected in the live code in the code base here on the right hand side. And when we complete the filtering process, the output of that can be seen as well. The downstream changes to the code, the server log will give us any information that we need as well. And the developers are supported all the way with information about what it is they're seeing, why there are limits on character inputs and so on. In this piece of code, and giving information that's pertinent to really help them understand in depth SQL injection. I'll do one more of these little sections here, and we can see how it looks if we invoke a part of a SQL query syntax, for example, by putting in an empty quote. Again, we can see the input in the live code. We can see the output, the filter that has been completed. There's more information provided to the developer about why this is important, that this error message indicates that the SQL query has been badly constructed and was therefore executed in a way that means we have an exception in our server log. We've got some issues here that we need to address and really understand it, and tells how this means this query is vulnerable to SQL injection and why this is the case and how this could be utilized by hackers against an organization, allowing them to access information that they shouldn't be able to. You know, you don't want people to be able to access your bank details, your personal details, and so on. And so this really gives developers another perspective on exactly you know, what's going on when it comes to you know, the lack of security and secure configuration and coding that happens in our code. So, you know, lots of organizations face challenges when it comes to that type of development, secure coding practices, and, you know, developers may not receive even, you know, adequate security training. They may not prioritize this type of security in their development processes. You know, insecure code, as I said, can be introduced and the risk of that obviously is huge when it comes to security breaches and vulnerabilities. So this is the way that we address that issue within our platform. Along with those challenges, as you can see, you start to build this type of learning. So, you know, you start with maybe reading some guidelines, watching some videos, getting a real kind of deep understanding of this vulnerability, and then challenging yourself on how you actually execute that. So when we work with developers, we have around 200 hours of this kind of training. This starts with simple things like revealing hidden user menus, revealing hidden passwords, and then moves on to more complex scenarios such as SQL injection. So I've completed 3 of the little parts of this here, but we've got a number of different challenges that take you through very thorough and deep understanding of SQL injection, and gets you really on, you know, on a very deep path here, so that you can properly code in future with a clear understanding of, if you do not, what risks that brings to your organization. And that's very important. It gives people that kind of sense of part of the security process of the organization, and not seeing security as a problem. You know, we know that as a AppSec organization, when you approach a developer, or you'll start to talk to a developer, or they receive a ticket, there's this big sigh, and, you know, oh, here they are again, it's the security team, I'm in trouble. And it takes away from that kind of feeling to a much more proactive approach, and that comes with giving the deep understanding of security. So let me go back to my presentation. Again, I'll invite any questions or comments here. I'd be very interested to hear what anyone might think, whether or not you are also experiencing, you know, a lack of secure coding practices, and what that's meaning for your organization. We know that lots of developers admit to sometimes leaving these problems in code. We know that when these problems are in and they are identified and they are high risk, we know of all the vulnerabilities that are identified, 20% of those vulnerabilities will be high risk and will need to be fixed by developers. And we know that that takes an awful long time and costs an awful lot of money. Is this something that you're experiencing within your organizations? Are your SaaS results giving you, you know, huge amounts of vulnerabilities that need to be fixed? Are you having the time to fix all of those? And wouldn't it be fantastic if you didn't have to go through that process and things were coded securely and safely from scratch?
Right. So do we have any questions so far? If you have questions, simply raise your hand and ask. We would like to hear if you have, you know, how is the session going so far for you? Can we have a quick views from you on the chat box? Right. Okay. Am I audible? Am I visible?
I can hear you.
All right. Saurabh says informative. Thank you so much. Can we have some more responses? Just want to make sure that, you know, thank you so much, Khushbu. So just want to make sure you're getting the, you know, whatever you came for. Are we meeting your expectations? How is the session going so far for you? Shubhangi saying really good. Soumya says good session. Thank you so much. Pratiksha is saying session is informative and all right. Thank you so much for your acknowledgement, guys. If we have any more, thank you, Akhil. Akhil says really informative. So just wanted to check on Anand is saying nice session, lovely. So can we, if you have any questions, simply raise your hand. We can unmute you and you can ask your questions directly to TJ. Right. So how do we try this product?
Okay, so we have a process. Well, they can obviously talk to Meteonic because we work in partnership with you in order to provide demonstration options. So we give access. You can get access for a couple of weeks. We run proof of value processes with organizations where we look to identify the areas where you're feeling the pain and help you to understand how the system can fix that pain, help to fix that pain, working with your developers. And we provide access over, usually 2-3 weeks, something like that, where you can utilize this. We run tournaments with organizations. So as part of the gamification, we can have tournaments played where you get lots of developers with different skill sets all playing together in the same tournament, all with the same challenges, despite the language differences that they're using. We can give great insights and so on at the end of that. And so it's just a matter of asking, really, either with Secure Code Warrior directly, and you're very welcome to contact me directly, or with Mitionic as well. And so, yeah, we'll often run those in events with you, and yeah, we do it all the time. So yeah, just let us know if that's something that you're interested in. We'll give you access. We give access to 20 developers or more for a couple of weeks and let them test out the system, give us feedback on what they like or don't like about it, test all of the content and all of the different features and functionality. We run tournaments, as I said, we give prizes and so on. And that, really starts to ingrain and give an organization a good culture of security and gets people a bit more enthused about security rather than it being a chore.
Right. Thank you so much for that, TJ. I've shared a link in the chat box. If you would like to avail this, kindly put all your details in there. And our security experts at Mitionic will get in touch with you and give this support to you on priority. So share the link in the chat box. Do fill up the details. You can copy it and open it in a new browser while we continue with the session. Over to you, TJ.
Thank you. Right, let's look at the final issue that I've noted for today in terms of common issues that are faced by CISOs: complexity and rapid development. So, in the last 3 years, I mentioned earlier, since I started working with the organization, we've introduced 13 new languages and frameworks, 3,000 activities. We've got 3 new training methods in the platform, and we're very, very hot on applying new security concepts and new languages and new content into the platform. When I started working here 3 years ago, we had 50 languages and frameworks in the platform, which is an awful lot. So it's the leader in the marketplace. You'll often find that there's far fewer than that, and the content isn't quite there. So this platform has been built up over 10 years with a huge amount of content and language coverage. So we've got 63 languages and frameworks, and we can combine those languages and frameworks in activities such as tournaments, such as course material, and that all is delivered to developers in a really neat way that gets them enthused and excited about security. Like I said, in bite-sized chunks as well, rather than it becoming a chore. This makes it much more digestible and retainable. When you use the training this way, you retain it much more efficiently than you would if you were sitting in a classroom for 1 day a year. And the cost is, I think it works out less than a cup of coffee a day per developer. So it really is much more digestible from a financial cost perspective and from a utilization perspective as well. We've got, all those new languages that are put in, we've got 3,000 new activities. When I started, we had 5,000 activities in the platform. We've got over 8,000 now. We've got those 200 hours of the interactive training as well. And we have other methods of training in our platform which are really effective as well, which I'll look at in just a moment. But, the rapid pace of software development and the increasing complexity of applications like this can make it really difficult to maintain security throughout. And that's where we really come into our own, the development life cycle, the frequent code changes and so on, the use of, third-party libraries, AI, the adoption of DevOps, and continuous integrations, continuous deployment practices that can, introduce security risks, can be really impactful if they're not managed properly. And so what we do is we help developers to continually build and maintain their skills with this type of ongoing entry of new material. We release stuff monthly, which is put into the platform. We have webinars, blogs, white papers, all sorts of useful information, and we have a really strict SLA when it comes to new vulnerabilities as well. So I mentioned earlier, we all remember Log4j, right, and the issues that caused. And within, I think, 3 days, we had training scenarios on the platform. We'd sent them out to all of the developers, and we had a blog and a dedicated chat in our Slack as well to help developers with that. So we had one of the training scenarios that I showed you earlier was developed specifically for Log4j, so people can practice it in a real environment, experience it, and understand what it's all about. But we've just introduced something else new on the platform as well. I want to share with you just briefly. Do I have it open? Maybe this one. It's logged me out. Bear with me 1 second while I log back in again. If I'm out of the system too long, it takes me right out. So one of the things that we've just introduced is called Coding Labs. So what we heard from developers as they use the platform was, well, this is nice, but we want to practice writing code securely, because just looking at it doesn't allow us to experience it when it comes to creation. So as well as having our training where we can perform the challenges, we have our course material that encompasses all of those videos and written information that we've seen, and our walkthroughs with our front end and back end user scenarios. We also have these coding labs. Now, I always find that demonstrating a coding lab in front of people with development skills doesn't make for a very compelling demo, as they sit and watch me laboriously typing my bits of code in. So I've got one that I've partially completed, but I'll show you what I've done with this coding lab. We cover 8 languages at the moment with the coding labs, and we have I think the last time I counted, we had 55 coding labs. So these are, and the reason we only cover 8 languages and 55 at the moment is because these are brand new. They've been with us for around 3 months at the moment, and they were introduced specifically upon requests from developers. So we have a very responsive product team who are really interested in hearing from developers, what is it you want to see from the platform? And this is what we were told. They wanted to have the ability to write code, but they also wanted instant feedback on the quality of the code that they'd written. So with some work, the product team have created this scenario, which allows developers to get some on-time feedback. So we see again that they have some introduction information about the vulnerability that they're looking at. In this instance, we're looking at access control methods. So there's been a misconfiguration. Again, we're looking at our sudo bank that we have. So the controllers in this bank have been misconfigured, and we can learn more about that misconfiguration and how we are going to fix it. Now, as I said, I've completed 2 of these steps already, but what I did with the first task was look, and I've identified that both methods in this controller are only accessible to logged in users. So I've applied the authorization command here in this first controller to make sure that this code has been made safe and that you are required to log in before you can access the endpoints. So what we can see here as well is that developers are given a number of hints and step solutions. So if they're not sure about what to do, we never just leave them kind of, in the dark, not understanding what to do. If they're not sure, they can release these hints and step solutions, and they are given some help with exactly what it is they need to complete. And then when you submit the answer, if you're correct, you get this green line, so you know that you've done this configuration correctly. As I have for these first 2 steps here, we can see that the authorization has been coded for both of these first 2 tabs. And again, the step solutions have been released. You're given detailed tasks about what it is you need to achieve. But in the third, we can see there's an error here. And I like to leave this one here just so that I can demonstrate what this error looks like. It's very simple. I've just got 1 extra line there that shouldn't be there. And so it's not been correctly configured, and it's not yet safe. So I've still got a the ability to view the audit logs in there is only accessible to dev or admin roles. So that's what we need to make sure. At the moment, it's available to everybody. And so we can see here, again, hints and step solutions have been revealed. And where I've made this error, I get some information telling me what the error is and how I go about fixing it. I get this red line that she's explaining that I'm getting it. So it's a bit like having that personal tutor touch without having to have that personal tutor there all the time. So the developers didn't want to just know that, yes, I'm right, or no, I'm wrong. They want to know why they are correct or incorrect and what it is they can do about it. So this again is a live IDE. You notice when I was talking at the beginning, it took a little while to load. It can take, maybe 30 seconds or so, which is perfectly normal for a live IDE when developers are coding. This is an environment that they are very familiar with, allows them to write the code in any way they want and to get that immediate feedback. If they've made errors, they can roll back on their decisions. They've got a perfectly serviceable menu here that they can use that they're also very familiar with. So developers are really enjoying this at the moment. They really like this type of learning scenario. And the feedback that we're getting is that they're loving the feedback that they're getting to understand whether they're correct or not with the changes that they've made. So I just wanted to show you that just briefly. Because that's another kind of thing that we train in. And then we talked very, very briefly as well about building that security culture and getting people more enthused about security. And we know that everybody learns in different ways, right? So we looked at our challenge at the beginning where we have our languages laid out. We've got all of our challenges here so developers can go and work through these challenges at their wish. We have the ability to complete those front-end, back-end scenarios where they get to see the live code, or they can have curated course material created and developed based on things like OWASP or the output of your SAS results, for example. We can build bespoke material out for them and deliver it directly to developers. So they will receive videos, guidelines, these walkthrough scenarios with the live code, followed by some challenges and then a coding lab, all curated with the path of one particular vulnerability before moving on to the next vulnerability. And this gives developers a super deep understanding. They understand why they shouldn't leave those vulnerabilities in the first place if they were knowingly leaving them in. They understand how to code them correctly and not to make those errors and the consequences of not coding them correctly and what that means in terms of hackers and what they can do to manipulate that code and take advantage of that. So it gives such a thorough, deep understanding. And it, like I said, it's all bite-sized. It can all be done in small incremental sections. And this is really very well absorbed by developers and users. I mentioned tournaments, and I'd like to show you just briefly how the developers experience a tournament. So these are a bit like a capture the flag environment exercise, and we run these for developers so that they can have a fun experience for a short amount of time, and they will get some insight into, we will get some insight as managers and administrators, what those developers know and areas for further development and learning. So developers can go in and play in a tournament in this familiar environment with all of their challenges laid out here. They've got their top 3 players and we'll give prizes to the top players and so on. And the thing that's really cool about these tournaments, excuse me, when we create them, is that all of these languages can be combined in any way that you want in order to build out a fair set of challenges for developers. So when I applied my C Basic challenges there, we could see that we had 80 challenges. Now I've added C Embedded, we have 50, because there are 50 challenges which are the same for C Embedded in terms of vulnerability category, language, difficulty, challenge type, and so on. And so the system makes this intelligent set of challenges. And that is great for developers because they never get to play in an environment like that with different languages in the same environment. So they really enjoy that as well. And that's where, again, where the gamification comes in place. And we'll put those tournaments in place with a program. Excuse me.
TJ, take a break, have some water.
Thank you. I'll just have a quick drink.
Yeah.
That's my cold tea now, so that's yummy. So they will have these programs that we'll build out with belting programs where they'll complete a tournament. We'll identify the areas that developers need for further development, and then build in a belting program for them. So they will start with some assessment work, and if you pass that assessment, you can be then allowed to code at a certain level in an organization. If you fail it, then there is a course available to help bring you up to scratch, and so on. Then you'll complete the next assessment and you'll have your white belt and work through the different belting programs. We'll have belting programs, certification programs, courses, assessments, and all of that content as well. And it's all underpinned with some really good metrics, which we won't go into today, but there are some fantastic metrics in there as well for the organization. So that's the last part that I wanted to share with you. Excuse me. Am I just going to check whether I'm up to the last page? So yeah, just one more sort of final thoughts. When it comes to looking at these types of challenges, improving application security, as I've said, organizations need to invest in these types of security practices. We've already had a conversation about SaaS tools, pen testing, coding reviews, and so on. But when we're talking about shifting left, what we really, need to start doing more is starting left and having that integration of security into the development process, right from the design phase all the way through to deployment is really super important, especially nowadays, with developments in AI and so on. Hackers are getting smarter and faster and more impacting. And so, we really need to work vehemently to make sure that there are we're not at the risk of data breaching. We also, this is the point where I was going to talk to you about integrations, but we've already looked at those integrations. So as well as making sure that the organization is very well prepared for these types of vulnerabilities, ensuring that we are able to deal with them when they do occur is also very important. So the last part I would have shared would be the integration, where we've looked at the Jira integration that we did earlier on. And with that, I think I'm almost there. Oh yeah, so one final thing. So one thing that we look at when we work with organizations is the value drivers and delivering a return on investment. So what we need to understand is what's driving the investment from an organization, what's driving the need for this, whether it's innovation, customer trust, life cycle development, top talent retaining, compliance, quality, and so on. So these are sort of a top 5 that we hear all the time, looking at why organizations would then need to do that. And when we work through a POV process, we take these into account and we work very hard to demonstrate the value in each of these silos to an organization during that kind of trial phase. And then I think at the end, we've just got sort of a few quiz questions. So with that, I'm going to wrap up now. Take a breath, give you all...
sorry to interrupt you, TJ, but I think Saurabh Sisodia from Paytm has shared something to share.
Yeah, there's something just something interesting, or we can call it funny at the moment, like we're discussing related to AI and this one, right? Security. So it seems like ChatGPT is facing intermittent downtime because of DDoS attack at this moment. So someone just shared in our
That's very interesting, isn't it? So AI has been hacked itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That's literally just happened. Are you saying?
Yeah, right.
Thank you so much for sharing. That's on a very humorous note, timely in the group. So thank you for that, Saurabh. So before I move on to TJ again, I just have a quick poll, TJ, that what does this audience think that, what will be the trend in the coming 6 months, right? I mean, what do they anticipate that what will be priority for them as security leaders, the ones in the room today, that would they want to have a increased emphasis on automation, shift left approach, or embrace secure coding learning platforms, integration of security into DevOps? focus on cloud security or collaborative threat intelligence sharing, right? I mean, what's trending in the industry? What would be their call as leaders of their organization? Right. So the number one in the list is embracing security coding learning platforms, right? So the best way to fix problems are correct the root cause. So problems don't even show up, right? And that's what we are trying to do here, that correct the root cause. So the effects don't keep cropping up again and again and become costly mistakes and increase the costs of organization and thereby impacting the reputation and customer trust, right? So we fix it at the right time. So thank you so much for all your answers. I'm going to end the poll. It's a no-brainer that number one thing that this room wants to apply right away is embracing secure coding learning platforms, topping the list. And we have on number 2 is integration of security into DevSecOps practices, followed by cloud security and shift left approach. I mean, more on automation. So I think I've shared the results. Did I share the results? All right, I'm going to quickly share a result for your view and then stop sharing. So in the interest of time, thank you so much. So TJ, over to you if you have something else to add.
No, I actually, Vandana, I'm kind of done now. So that was everything that I had to share with you. There were some sort of quiz questions at the end. I'm not sure whether you've got them in a poll at your end or whether you want me to share the slide.
I think I was trying to set the poll, but it's incomplete. I mean, the quiz questions. So why don't we just throw the questions and they can respond in the chat box? So
yeah, sure. I have them actually on my slide. So let me share my screen very quickly one more time and we'll bring the slide up there. So I've just got the slide. I'll make sure my speaker note's not there because I've got my the answers in there. But yeah, so I can't see you guys anymore. Maybe Vandana, you can tell me when some answers are dropped in. But can anyone give me the number of developers, the percentage of developers who admit to intentionally leaving vulnerabilities in code? Can anyone remember that from earlier on?
Pratisha says 48%. Type in the chat box. So we will have a winner for each of the quiz questions, and do expect some goodie bags from Meteonic. Akhil says 61%. TJ, have we got the right answer?
The answer is, well, we had 48%. So if that's the first one that came up, I think you can give the correct answer to that person. 48% do intentionally leave it in. There's another 19% who will leave vulnerabilities in, but claim it's not intentional. They maybe do it accidentally. So the official number is 67% of developers admit to leaving vulnerabilities in code. 48% of them intentionally.
Lovely. So Akhil is the winner. Super.
Correct.
Akhil. So do expect some goodie bags from Meteonic. Let's move on to the second quiz question.
The average cost of a security breach in 2023. Can anyone recall?
Okay. So I think Saurabh has responded saying 4.45 million, the average cost of a security breach. Is that right answer, TJ?
That is correct, yes.
Superb. Yeah. So that was a super speedy response. So
yeah.
Saurabh is the next winner. The third quiz question is
That's
many...
Yeah. Sorry, I was going to say that's a cheeky one from our side. How many languages and frameworks do we have covered in the SCW platform? I did mention it.
Okay, Shubhangi says 63. Can we have some more responses? That's a tough one, I think. Saurabh says 8. Well, TJ, have we received the right answer yet?
We have. 63 is the correct answer. So we have 63 languages and frameworks. We've got a huge amount of content coverage in the platform.
Wow, that's a lot, right? I mean, did we can you name the languages that we on? I mean, 8 to 10 or?
I can show you. I can't recall them all. There are so many, but we have a huge amount. So when I go into our training languages, you can see here. Lovely. All of our languages and frameworks are laid out this way. So all of the C languages, C#, and we've got different frameworks, right? So C# Net Basic, Web API, Web Forms, and huge amounts of challenges that pertain to each of them as well. These are all different because languages are impacted by different vulnerabilities. Some have been around longer than others. Some are therefore naturally impacted, front end, back end, web, API, infrastructure as code, and so on. So we've got some real classics in there as well, you know, Docker, Kubernetes, Terraform, and so on for the infrastructure languages. And I'm going to scroll through and show you all of the languages that we have there. We have a lot. We even have, actually, which is quite interesting, something called pseudocode, which has been created specifically for the platform. So you may have people in your organization who are not coders, but still have a vested interest in security, operational staff or QA staff, for example, and these guys can use pseudocode. So it's written in plain text. There's no symbols, no acronyms, no shortcuts, nothing like that. Written in plain text, you can grasp the concept of security, practice those challenges, and learn in a way that doesn't require a coding language at all. And I'll just keep scrolling down so that you can see the rest of them. I think you'll all recognize the languages that we see there. And yes, there's something for everybody.
I think this is a great strength, right? I mean, so many languages in one platform. I think that's super awesome. I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And we add new stuff all the time. So SAP ABAP and Terraform AWS have just been added at the request of clients as well. So we take requests like a band.
So our winner is Shubhangi. Thank you for being very alert in the session. All right. So moving on to quiz question 4. TJ, go ahead.
Can anybody remember the main reason developers, so way back at the beginning when we started talking, we talked about the 67% of developers, and then we broke it down into the reasons why developers leave vulnerabilities in code. And there was one particular reason that stood out amongst all of the reasons they gave. Can anyone remember what that was?
Right. Right, Pratiksha, please carry on. Go ahead. And if you would like to get a detailed demo with your team or move to next steps, do get in touch with Team Meteonic. And thank you so much for your time, Pratiksha, today and also participating. Take care and have a great evening. I'm sorry, what is the question number 4? Are we getting the answers? The main reason developers leave vulnerabilities in the code. Anyone? Can I answer that, TJ?
Yeah, sure, please do.
I have a delivery timeline to meet.
That is one of them. Yeah, I think that was the second one. The main one was prioritizing functionality over security. So developers don't see security as their problem. Not that they're not interested. They don't see it as their problem. They are more interested, as we know, in creating this beautiful baby. And then security comes along and points out all of the flaws with this baby, right? With the 3 ears and everything. So it's prioritizing functionality over security.
Okay, functionality over security. Lovely. And the last question.
Yeah, so can you remember any other impact to businesses besides the financial impact of a data breach? So we know that they're very expensive, but what else could that do to your business? As well as the financial cost.
Anyone?
I mentioned 2 earlier when we were talking.
All right. Okay, so that one goes with me because nobody's claiming that price. So TJ, you may want to give the answer.
Yeah, sure. So it can massively damage your reputation as an organization, and also mean a loss of clients and generation of new clients as well. So, you know, as well as the financial impact, if it's a data breach which is widely reported, such as Equifax, we all know the repercussions of that from years ago. It's a hugely damaging issue for an organization.
Right. So I think we have Akhil. Akhil answered functionality over security. Did I miss seeing his answer? Because I was responding to Pratiksha, looks like. So anyways, Akhil and Saurabh are the winners for today, definitely, and Shubhangi. So thank you so much. If you those who are still in the session, if you could just let us know how the session was for you quickly, some emojis, thumbs up, so that we continue to bring more knowledge sharing sessions for you guys. Thank you so much. Lovely. We are getting some thumbs up emojis and clap. All right. So I would like to express my gratitude to TJ for taking out time. I know she was too occupied and still she took out time to facilitate this session today. Not only facilitate, we have received some key insights into industry trends and the best practices that can be leveraged, and how to intelligently be on new age learning platforms, so you're always ahead and continuously developing skills to make sure to elevate the security maturity of your organization, right? So thank you so much everyone for participating in. Thank you so much, TJ, and we look forward to continue to serve you with powerful insights that can transform the way you build secure and stable products, right?
Thank you for having me. Very much enjoyed it.
Lovely. Thanks everyone. Bye for now. Take care. And the winners, please expect calls from Meteonic team for your goodie bag. Akhil, Shubhangi, and Saurabh. Take care. Bye for now, everyone.